Excited.
All right, it did change on my screen, so we'll see if that works. All right, we're here now. Awesome. So welcome to my stream. I hope that you had an opportunity to watch the video that I premiered that was before this stream. If you haven't, stick around for this when it's live, but not when it's not live. Pause it and go watch that other video. I'll have it linked in the description box below, and as well as my first comment, so it's easily accessible. That being said, I am joined with Shannon Q today. She has, I wanted her to share her experience as far as being in a capitalist society and also struggling with an illness. So Shannon, if you want, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Shannon Q. I am also somebody who lives with multiple sclerosis. I was diagnosed at the age of 33. I'm currently 38 years old. And before that, I was diagnosed with a condition called transverse myelitis, which is essentially a precursor to MS, and likely I had MS at the time as well. So I've probably had MS for about 10-ish years. And I'm really excited to be here to have this conversation with you. I think it's really valuable to hear from people who have these types of disabilities, especially what you might consider invisible disabilities.
Right.
And to have discussions about how we operate in society and society's expectations upon not only us, but other people, and how they may or may not be realistic, so that people can relate and see what it's like to be affected by something like this. So I appreciate the opportunity that you've given me to have this conversation with you. So thank you.
Well, it kind of helps feed the conversation as well. So one thing that, so for a story, for example, regarding that hidden aspect or hidden disability, MS is well known to be hidden, where there are maybe your primary symptom is fatigue, or maybe you have cognitive issues. That being said, when I was in graduate school, I think I've already told this story on a live stream, but I'm going to retell it.
Sure.
When I was in graduate school, I have had to get accommodations to basically take tests in a separate area. All of those things that you would think somebody with, with lower processing speed would need. And one of the professors, she was a statistician professor. She basically had an assignment for us to do, and I didn't complete the assignment in time, even though I had an accommodation saying that I had an additional day to complete it. She didn't give me that additional day, and her reasoning was because I was a graduate student and not an undergraduate student. I'm like, there's no difference there. But I didn't get that. I still made a B in that class with basically it was a 4-week class. And so you had assignment a week, and that all counted towards your primary grade. So I had to kick it up because I wasn't able to do that. But in that process of her explaining why she wasn't going to give me that accommodation, she basically said, well, it's not like there's anything wrong with your brain.
And this is a neuroscience?
She's statistics. Because you have to take statistics.
But she was statistics that was actually in the field of psychology, because you studied neuroscience though, right? Like, so she would understand that multiple sclerosis is something that directly affects your brain.
Well, when you get the accommodations, it doesn't specify why you're getting it.
And then why the hell did she make that assertion?
I don't know. And it was only like a year later because she did all of the statistics courses, and I took
Yeah.
all of the statistics course because I liked
You have to.
statistics.
And also you have to. It's valuable, especially if you're going
It's
into
very
like research,
valuable.
to understand how to interpret the
Yeah,
data. Yeah.
about a year later, I told her, that's what she said during that time, and I'm like, I have MS, and that is basically your whole brain is impacted a lot of the times that well, at least mine is. And she was profusely apologized. She's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I said that. I am so sorry," and things like that. She just, I don't know. It's a learning experience, and it's a good thing to basically get it out there and tell people, just because I look fine doesn't mean I am fine.
Right.
And so it's very important. Disability often is neglected as far as activism is concerned too.
Yeah. If it's not very visible, if there's not
Right.
something that you can put up on a poster essentially, and if there's not somebody that you can put up that's visibly, impaired in some fashion,
Right.
that's impactful to somebody, where they can actually resonate that, oh, that person is different from me in some fashion. When it's cognitive, or when it's, something like fatigue, or or having this sort of mind fog, or having this pain that resonates through you but isn't visible, but you're still able to, be ambulatory.
Right.
People aren't as apt to be kind, or understand, or have empathy, or even take it seriously, or
Right.
understand that it's a real palpable thing that is happening that is affecting that person, because it's not visible to them.
So Shannon, could you, with that being said, could you kind of explain your MS story and kind of where you are today with your condition?
Yeah, I mean, sure, I can. So when I feel like I'm recounting for you because we were having this conversation beforehand.
That's fine.
So when I was 27, I was at a party with some friends, and all of a sudden I got really acute chest and back pains. Like, I describe it as feeling like somebody stuck a pole through me. It was like if heartburn was dialed up to 1,000,000, and also coupled with back pain. And all of a sudden my vision was very blurry, and I had a very difficult time coordinating myself. They were trying to get me to pour myself a drink of water, and I couldn't figure out how to get my hand to get over where the cup was to even get myself a cup of water out of like the pitcher. I had to lie down. I ended up going to the emergency room, and they thought that they couldn't find anything wrong with me, is essentially what happened when I went to the emergency room, which you wouldn't, because it's a neurological disorder. So
Right.
you're not going to find anything physiologically wrong. They said that maybe I might have a heart murmur, but ultimately my heart is operating fine. But I should go see my family doctor, who referred me to a neurologist. So I went to the neurologist and got a series of MRI scans, and I found out that there weren't lesions all up and down my spine. And I was diagnosed with something called transverse myelitis, which they told me at the time was a precursor to multiple sclerosis, but I may not get it. So I was getting screened throughout my life, because things kept happening. Like, I wouldn't be able to move my fingers at one point in time. Like, if I had a spray bottle, I couldn't push it down. I just like couldn't coordinate my hands to be able to do something like that. No matter how much I willed it, I would have to use my other hand to like push my finger down to get a spray bottle to work, because it affects my arms quite a bit because where my lesions are, I guess. I should look it up at some time. They're, I think, C2 and C3, the spinal lesions. And anyway, I got to the point that I was driving somewhere. I think I was driving to another friend's house. This is after I'd had my son, which is a whole different story. I could tell that story too. I could talk for hours about this stuff. But when I ultimately got diagnosed with MS, I was driving to a friend's house, and my vision just went weird. Like, I could kind of see, but not really. It was like I would describe it if you rub your eyes really hard and that thing you have for a second where your eyes can't quite see, like you
Right,
have that sort of
focus.
blurry vision. Like it's not that it's blurry, it's that like you rubbed your eyes too hard and you open them up and you have that sort of staticky vision. I had that like in spots. It wasn't all of my vision, it wasn't my entire visual field, but I had it in spots, and enough that it was detrimental to me and I was having a difficult time driving.
Wow.
So I contacted my neurologist and they sent me for another set of MRIs. And it turned out that along my in my occipital lobe, in my hippocampus, and along my optic nerve, and in some other areas in my brain, I was starting to form additional lesions.
Wow.
And at that point in time, similar to your story, and we shared this beforehand, that I'd assumed that maybe it might be MS, and they were gonna tell me whether or not it was, or if it was something else, or if it was a progression of the myelitis that I had. And then I get a phone call at work one day saying, "Hi, this is the MS Research Center at Dalhousie University. You have an appointment with us next week." And I was at my office and I went, "Do I have multiple sclerosis?" And they're like, "Well, we can't tell you that." And I was like, "You're the MS Research Center. Why would I be coming there if I don't have multiple sclerosis?"
Right.
And they're like, you can talk to the neurologist. So anyway, I went in and talked to the neurologist. That's a whole different story. And when I got there, and keep in mind, I'm a competitive softball player too, who runs a softball league.
Wow.
The neurologist said, "Okay, we have some news for you." His name was Dr. Richard Leckie. He said, "Let's just say you'll never pitch for the Mets." And I looked at him and I said, "I'm a softball player. I'm a competitive softball player." "What do you mean?" He was like, "Oh, I didn't know that, but you have multiple sclerosis." And then he started handing me brochures like this for treatment options. So yeah, that's in a nutshell, my multiple sclerosis story. There's more to it than that, but that's at least the Coles Notes version of my diagnostic story of MS.
Right.
And yeah, and ever since it's been a struggle. It was a struggle prior because of the myelitis and because of the symptoms. And now it's even more of a struggle because I know it has a name and I know that it's progressive. And yeah, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. So I appreciate you inviting me on to have a conversation about it, because it's not something people talk about that often. Because like I said, it is invisible.
Well, you're welcome. One thing that I find myself doing, even 13 years after my diagnosis, is basically saying, I'm worthless because I can't do the same things other people are capable of doing. I can't be active. I can't socialize as well or as easily as other people. My career is completely non-existent because of my condition. And so I find myself going, well, because of all those things, I have no value. And I think that that's part of our basically society. It's a societal issue more than anything, when I rationally think about it at any rate. Because we shouldn't put value on bodies, whether they're able bodies or not. You shouldn't have value based off of what you are able to produce, as far as monetarily produce. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do, actually. I think that it's incredibly difficult for people, not only with something like multiple sclerosis, but people with any sort of mental health issue in general, all of those invisible sort of issues, to be able to articulate that struggle. And we have cultivated a society that looks at people as commodities,
Right.
that, like you said, that can be monetized, and we've taught each other through this culture that that's how we attribute value to people.
Right.
And it's not. We need to really have a look at how we do attribute value to people, what does make somebody inherently valuable, and what they can contribute, and not make the locus of that what they can produce. So I agree with you there. Like what they can produce in the way of a commodity that can be
Right.
consumed by other people. Like if that's what you feel is attributing value to somebody else, then you need to take a step back and take a good, long, hard look at what you consider valuable, and how it relates to your perception of humanity.
Right.
Does that make some
That
sense?
makes
Sometimes I get foggy.
that makes total sense. And so part of this issue is that it's so ingrained in our culture. So even just saying like the what I'm able to contribute, value, the value that I have, these are all money terms. If you think about it, there is no value without
Value.
money, at least in our society. So I think that it's so ingrained that it would require, in order to basically fix this problem, in order to assure that everybody is seen as equitable, whether they have hidden disability or disability or anything or not, it would take an entire restructuring of our system, essentially. And that's the problem, because I don't think that will happen in my lifetime, personally. And it's sad because I don't want to be viewed as valueless from others, and I shouldn't be viewed, even though I find myself doing that, I shouldn't be viewed as valueless to myself, from myself.
Well, how do you assign your self-value?
Right.
Do you find you're assigning your self-value within the paradigm of a system that you disagree with? Or do you find that you assign your self-value within your own individual paradigm of what you conceive as valuable?
I think I kind of tend to go for the latter.
Okay.
It's not, it's just it's just an instinctual problem that I have because of the fact that this type of culture is so ingrained in ourselves.
Right.
And so I do find myself going, wait, I should stopping that. And I
Right.
shouldn't do this because I don't agree with this. And I just wish more people didn't agree with it.
Right. So
And
do you find it hard because you think that you're perceived by others as invaluable, and that you need to work um, hard to change that structure so that other people will change their view of that same paradigm?
well, I think it's more of, it's kind of a little bit like that, but
Okay.
I want to work so hard to changing the structure because I want to survive too.
Mhm.
And like I said in the video, I would like to assure that I live in dignity and others live in dignity
Agreed.
with no regard to conditions. And right now, that isn't the case.
Right.
I don't know how it is in your country, but I know in the United States, our social safety nets are pretty shitty, to say the least, and it's horrible. And so you are forced to do something that you are incapable of doing, essentially,
Right.
in order to assure that people are taken care of around you, and it's just exhausting. Well,
So you feel like a system is built that excludes people
oh,
in order to
absolutely.
like be lucrative is not the right word. What's the word I'm looking for? In order to be viable
Right. Yeah.
within the system, you need to essentially be fully able-bodied and and exist within the and have the ability to operate under a certain set of predetermined, ultimately irrelevant criteria that have to do with like clock punching,
Right.
and in order to sustain a lifestyle. I can.
Well, yeah, that. But
Oh, sorry. Okay.
the hidden aspect of a disability means that in many many areas, in many ways, your problem, whatever you have going on, isn't accommodated because
Fair.
people don't see it. I know that I have a disability placard on my car,
Hmm.
and I get people looking, scowling at me when, I go out and park in a handicap spot, which is what it's there for, so I don't have to walk as much.
Yeah.
It's
But they don't
just,
see you in a wheelchair, and you're
mm-hmm,
not, and you're a beautiful, lovely young woman. So they see you walking out not in a wheelchair,
right,
and being able to carry yourself, and assume that
exactly.
that means that you don't have a disability.
I think I am susceptible to external pressure
Yeah,
and so that is a fault of mine, and it's something that I certainly need
it's
to
not your
work
fault.
on. But I find myself going, oh, you know what? I'm going to bring my cane. Just even if I'm feeling good, even if I'm sturdy, even if my whatever, I can walk just fine. I'm going to bring that because I don't want other people doing that to me, you know?
Right. Yeah, no, I can completely understand that, because it operates as a shield from that unnecessary, uninformed criticism
Mm-hmm.
that is just making your mental state worse, when really you're there for a reason. Otherwise, you wouldn't have those plates to begin with. And people are giving you judgments that are completely uninformed.
Right.
So I can completely understand that. And I'm sorry that that happens to you. And
Well, I think it happens to pretty much everybody who isn't in a wheelchair,
mhm.
isn't visibly uh, having some issue. So I wanted to go into kind of this social justice aspect because
Okay.
from the literature that I've read, it seems, and from my own personal experience, it seems that disability tends to be ignored. And there, I have a thing I wanted to say, but I'm trying to figure out how to tie it in. But it's a really interesting thing.
Fine.
So there's an idea or concept of basically what can get to the ultimate goal
Mhm.
for so that everybody lives under a just society.
Mhm.
And it was developed by Nancy Fraser.
Oh,
And her account of social justice is intended to bring together in a synthesis the two main, basically left wing strands of, current time period, so that gets together and it dually. I'm sorry, I'm having my jaw is doing that spasming.
you're okay. You're okay. Take your time. Take your time.
So the socialists, there's a socialist strand that has focused on issues of economic redistribution, because a lot of the problem that we have in society is that we have these hierarchies based off of money or how much
Mhm.
money you have. And there's a post-socialist strand that has focused on issues of cultural recognition, and it's expanded to accommodate also political representation. This is something that people have looked to basically build kind of a comprehensive theory to either critique or improve our current present day injustices. And so I think this is fascinating, to be perfectly honest, because of the fact that this aspect of disability has been ignored so much. And what did they say that was super interesting? I'm trying to figure out a way to say it. Mm,
You can just blurt it
basically,
out.
okay. So basically, what they have come to determine based from that theory is that it's an all or nothing process. And so you have to address both the economic and cultural and political aspects of these injustices. Otherwise, they will not become just. You can't have one without the other. So disability needs to be considered. It should be automatically a part of every activist's goal, if their goal is to create a just society. So I just think it's true, because you can't solve one injustice without solving the other. Recently, there's this theory, not recently, but more coming into more mainstream aspect of, there's this aspect of, what is that called? Where it's like two things connected at once.
Intersectionality.
Thank you. Oh my God. So the concept of intersectionality has become more mainstream.
That's a super valuable concept too.
And it is, but it even ignores people with disabilities. I've never heard anybody mention intersectionality and include people who are disabled.
That's fair, actually, and valid, because it's usually identity that's utilized with intersectionality. It's usually, where feminism intersects with race, or where trans rights intersects with feminism,
Right.
or where LGBT issues intersects with race, or LGBT intersects with. So that's valuable and interesting information for me to consider, because I've always been somebody who, at least I like to think, ostensibly, I consider myself an activist for humanistic type causes, and specifically because I have a bit of a background in psychology. I mean, I'm not you. I'm not Amanda. but I like to talk about ableism when I can, and misuse of psychological principles and psychological abuse, and the misrepresentations of psychiatric disorders,
Right.
and their use as pejoratives in particular. So I think you're right, because I don't know that I've ever seen any of the really prevalent talking heads really interjecting where disability intersects, because literally anybody with any identity on any level of that spectrum, regardless of gender, regardless of race, is susceptible to what happens when you become disabled, or are born disabled. And it is an amplification of that intersectionality, of that intersection, I should say. And so that's valuable. I'd not looked at it that way, or at least hadn't had it in my awareness so prevalently that they aren't discussing that.
Yeah,
So as somebody who talks about it more frequently, I value you bringing that up, because it means that I can be more aware of it in the future.
Yeah, and it won't be brought up without people, or it won't be considered as part of this intersectionality that needs to be addressed without people like you and me discussing it and actually bringing it up and mentioning, again, if one injustice exists, all injustices basically exist. You cannot solve one in and of itself. So to interrupt myself real fast and to address something that you said, you keep going kind of like, oh, I'm not you with your background and your education, whatever.
You're intimidating to me. You're so much smarter than me. It's intimidating. Yeah.
What I think about that is, I'm sorry you're intimidated, for one. For two, if you continue to kind of show an interest and continue to, dive into the literature, keep up to date with all these new kind of concepts that are going on in the field, you are just as valid as far as what you have to offer, uh, what you can bring to the table, what you can talk about, as anyone else who has a very high education. Because you're doing the same thing, you just don't have a piece of paper confirming it.
I do
So,
have a piece of paper. It's just not the same piece of paper that
right,
you
yeah. So you don't have like that big piece
I don't
of
have
paper.
the PhD piece of paper. I just have the little piece of paper on my wall.
Yeah, I don't know why they're different, like why is one bigger? I could never understand that.
They are though. They're
Yeah, right?
physically they're bigger. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true story.
It's strange. So that's what I'm interrupting myself with. Sorry. To get back on track, I I want to figure out how we can more easily make this concept more accessible to others.
Dialogue.
Yeah,
I
because
think dialogue's the answer to everything, though. Really.
right, yeah, it really is. I know that I've been hesitant myself
Mhm.
to mention how my illness affects me. I just tend to go, yeah, I've got this symptom today. It's particularly bad, but I don't tell them how it's affecting my life
Right.
and what it has done and where I'm afraid it will go, because it is so unpredictable, right? I mean,
Mhm.
tomorrow I could be paralyzed completely,
Yeah.
because it's just like that. Do you have any of those similar concerns or those similar hesitations?
I really do. Um, I can relate in not wanting to talk about it because I feel as though if I do talk about it consistently, and I'm not sure if you can relate to this, if I actively relate my day-to-day experiences to people,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to this illness in particular, I feel as though people we get tired of hearing it or see it as me attempting to elicit sympathy,
Right.
which I really can't tolerate. Like I really can't tolerate that because I don't like people feeling as though I need their sympathy. So I just don't at all.
Right.
I just, you shoulder it, right?
Yeah.
You act like everything is fine
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to tell people, okay, it was really difficult for me to lift my arms today.
Right.
That was really hard for me. It was really, really hard for me to make my kid dinner because I was very, very concerned that when I moved the frying pan, I was going to burn myself because I didn't know where my fingers were. So I opted to just, drive and get takeout today because it's easier for me to drive because I can control these muscles more than I can control my fingers, which is what
Right.
I need to be able to. It's really hard to be able to articulate that to people, and most people, and I think this is the crux of a lot of it for people, is when you relay this information to people, it is so intensely personal
Mm-hmm.
and so hard, and you're making yourself so vulnerable that when people don't care, or even worse, when people tell you it's not important and you shouldn't care
Mm-hmm.
and to stop complaining about it, it has a deep and dramatic impact that I avoid. So I avoid that impact by just not sharing it with anybody and acting like everything's fine.
I completely relate to that for sure. So I had a relapse a few years ago while I was in graduate school. I
Right.
remember, and um, I don't know if they do this in Canada, but or Nova Scotia. Is that?
Nova Scotia is in Canada. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
it's a
what I
different
thought.
province
I
in
was
Canada.
like,
Yeah,
wait, why
yeah,
do I always hear people
yeah.
say
You're
that
right on both counts.
that's a new country or something? But I don't know if they
Might as
do.
well be.
I don't know if they do this in Canada, but
Mhm,
here you can have nurses come to you to
mhm.
infuse the steroid treatment.
You can here too. We have
Okay.
BON.
So I was doing that, but beforehand, my place was a utter disaster because I hadn't been able to clean it because relapsing.
Can relate. Green screen, so
So
you
I,
can't see.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Or I
Mhm.
just like push everything out, out of
Yeah.
visibility so nobody sees
Yep.
it. Uh, so I caved, and because I get really embarrassed about how my place looks when it's not good. So I caved and asked my mom and my sister. I said, can you guys come over and help clean or just clean? Because I've got, a nurse coming over to infuse, and I don't want her to see the mess that's here. And my sister's response was, well, somebody actually else asked on my behalf. Her response was, she's always sick. I'm perturbed. And so I've never told
Oh, honey, I'm
them
so sorry.
again about how, the kind of help that I need or how things are operating, just because, I mean, this is my twin sister. And so
You're twins?
I'm thinking, if she thinks this way, then certainly, anybody else, everybody else probably does, because she's, the person that used to share so many experiences with me, and
Yeah.
I don't know, it was very hurtful. Uh,
Because she can't relate to you anymore. I'm sorry. I'm getting really emotional.
I'm sorry.
No, you don't need to be sorry. Like, it's actually, I don't know if you feel like this. It's very hard to find somebody to share some of this stuff with, especially because you feel like you need to be so guarded and hide so much of it, because people expect you, especially like you don't have lesions, you're not in a wheelchair. People expect you to just be normal.
Right,
Like, you look normal. Like, I play sports, for example, and they're like, you play soccer and you play baseball. I'm like, not as well as I used to.
right.
And and you have no idea what it takes out of me. And I need to do that to be social. Because I don't want to quit these things that I've loved my
Yeah.
entire life. So until I'm literally physically incapable of moving, they're essentially accommodating me at this point.
Well, I no,
But like,
I do the same thing.
oh, your
I still do
sister. Oh,
gymnastics,
yeah,
but what it
good.
takes to do that, I have to basically rest every day
Mhm.
until my gym day. But I'm like you in that regard. I will be doing this until my body just cannot move anymore. That's how much
Could you
I love
imagine?
the sport.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
But like, this is something that I think about all the time, especially as an athlete, and maybe you can relate to, is being told as an athlete that you may not be able to move anymore. Like, at some point, you will walk through fire. You will do everything you can. Like, even just as a human, I don't even think as an athlete. If you're told one day you're probably not going to be able to move anymore, like, and you're not, it's out of your control. It's a maybe, but it's a strong maybe. And even if you aren't completely unable to move, like, parts of you are just not going to function the way that other people do. Every minute of every day that I have available to me, that I'm capable of doing a thing, anything, especially something that I love, you're goddamn right, I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
And if you look at me and think, well, that means that you're not sick, or that means that you don't have a disability, then fuck you, because you have no idea what's in my head right now. What's in my head is, I could wake up tomorrow and find out that this was the last day that I was ever able to kick a soccer ball, because already my right pinky toe is numb and I've fallen 3 times. So maybe tomorrow is going to be the day that I find out that I don't get to do this anymore. Maybe because, especially my arms, maybe I won't be able to swing a bat next summer. And COVID meant that I missed my baseball season this year. And maybe that was the last baseball season I was ever going to have. So if you look at me and think to yourself, well, you're capable of doing this now, to whatever degree you're capable of, So obviously there's nothing wrong with you, or obviously you should be able to do this, or you should be able to do that. You know what? I'm taking everything the fuck out of me that I can in order to be able to do this at all, because I know that it might be the last time I do it. And my room can be cleaned 3 weeks from now, but I may not get to hold a baseball bat again. And you don't have that as a concern in your life. You don't have to wake up in the morning thinking that this might be the last time I ever do something that I really, 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 really love. So maybe shut up.
Yeah,
Maybe.
that's exact. Yeah, I have that same experience where I'm like, I don't care. I know that my gymnastics is not what it used to be. Every day I've gone back to the gym. I love it so much, but I've noticed that like there's some skill that I can no longer do
So hard
because
too.
I just can't. My like leg muscles are too weak, so I don't tumble on the floor anymore. I go to the trampoline because of it, because I just can't physically jump that way. It's just heartbreaking, but it confuses people, right? It basically goes, well, you're doing gymnastics, and that's amazing. That's like a great thing that requires so much of your body. What's the problem? And
Does that make you mad?
it pisses me off so much. and then with the COVID thing, right? You know, I believe that I had COVID already, but it doesn't last. Like your immunity apparently doesn't last very long to it, like maybe up to 2 months. And so we still have dumbasses not wearing masks down here. And so I'm particularly vulnerable to not only getting very sick, because I already that was already shown that I got really sick, but also it can cause a relapse in my MS, and it can worsen that, and it could, like you, I'm missing my gymnastics season. There's not really a season, but I haven't gone to the gym in months because of this. And if people would wear a mask, I'd probably go to the gym. But I can't until people get their act together. One thing that I'm scared about is this basically, what is it called? I don't know what it's called right now. It's where people kind of weigh options as far as who's sick or not, who two people maybe are sick at the same time. Who is the one you allow to die, right?
Like a trolley problem sort of thing. Yeah.
And so I've been seeing a troubling amount of articles lately, even one was published in the New York Times, where somebody argued,
picking off us on desirables.
Right, basically,
we're a drain on the system, so just let us die.
Yeah, where they were arguing that, and at the end of the conclusion of the article, they basically said, "Come on, you've thought about this too, like you would agree with me." And I'm like, "Excuse me, I would never agree to that." And I don't know who this author has talked to, or the people this author hangs around with, but if they represent the whole of society that's around me, again, the catch-22, I want people to be aware of the condition and also the problems of hidden disability or otherwise, but also if something happens like a pandemic and everybody's in the hospital at the same time, I don't want them to prioritize somebody that doesn't have MS just because of that. And so that scares me. That's been frightening. I've been thinking about that, especially because it's been showing up so much.
Especially since we have to be the most safe too. Like I remember share, just if it's okay to share like a personal story for a sec. So
Sure.
when COVID hit, I live in Nova Scotia, where we currently have one active case, and it's active as of today.
Wow.
That's it. That's all we have. We went into lockdown. Like, it's mandatory masks here. We went into lockdown. But in March, when it first happened, I have multiple sclerosis and asthma.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
And
Oh my God. Sorry, continue.
yeah, and I have a son that has asthma and something called spasmodic croup. He's had croup 23 times. So I worry about his immune system because I breastfed him, and I feel like I'm giving him my immune system. so anyway, he has breathing issues too. So starting in March, and I'm a single mom too, right? He was in lockdown with me. I was working from home, homeschooling him full time, just the two of us. We went nowhere. Like, if we needed groceries, I ordered them online and I got them dropped in my trunk. If I needed something that I couldn't get at my grocery order, because sometimes that happened, I would get it dropped on my doorstep and have to sanitize it before I brought it in my door. I had to do all of that stuff. And I was watching, like, on Facebook and Twitter, and as all these people are living their lives, essentially, just like, screw COVID, I don't care. And they're like at a friend's house having a beer. I'm like, I do not, especially during the first part of our curve. Like, I understand that you feel like if you caught it, like, you may not survive or you may not transmit it, whatever. But you have that additional layer of confidence that if I get it, I'll be fine. And that arrogance of like, well, maybe I won't give it to anybody else. Like, even ignoring that arrogance, that if I get it, I'll be fine component. I don't even have that luxury. I'm an asthmatic with MS with a small child who also has lung issues.
Right.
I have to be locked in my house, teaching him full time while I'm working full time to pay our bills. Like, exhausted as fuck, because now, and I'm doing that with the disability too, right? Like, I'm doing that with MS. Like, I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning, exhausted as hell, keeping a 9-year-old occupied, teaching him. Like, I get off work after working a full day, and now I'm at his Chromebook teaching him his school lessons while getting dinner ready, keeping this house clean. It's not really currently right now. And then doing it all the same day, doing it all the next day, over and over and over again, completely in isolation. While other people are just like, well, you know what? I probably won't die. Yeah, I probably would die. And my son might die. Yeah. And if he got it, he would maybe make me die. And if I get it, I would maybe make him die, because we have this additional susceptibility. And essentially what you're saying is, I'm going to go live my life. Whatever. Who cares? Screw COVID. I'll probably be fine. What's everybody worried about? What everybody's worried about is people like me and my son. And the elderly people, which you're essentially saying nobody should give a fuck about, because who needs to interrupt your drinking time with your neighbors? Because you deserve downtime. Do you deserve downtime? Do I deserve downtime? Apparently not, because apparently living with a disability, being a single mom, raising and homeschooling a child, and still working a full-time job is something that I should do for as long as I need to, so that you can have a drink with your buddy whenever you feel like it, because nobody wants to inconvenience you. So I can relate. Well, that's what I'm saying. I can relate.
Well, here in the United States, one of the main arguments about, continuing to live one's life under the pandemic, like not going through the precautions, is because, well, they're sick anyways. They're old anyways.
We're not dying.
Right.
We're not dying.
And so it's like, if they die, then, good. That's essentially what I'm seeing and what I'm reading from people. And it's alarming that I never thought that way, ever. And now I'm seeing all of these things pop up. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Somebody asked a question that I can't answer, but maybe you can answer. Brad Bloom asks, has there been any information about stem cell treatments? I say that because I've read about wealthy people going to Panama or someplace to get these treatments that miraculously improve their condition. Do you know anything about that?
I do not know anything about that. One, I'm not wealthy.
Right.
And two, I'm leery of a lot of that stuff. Do you remember when liberation treatments happened? Do you remember that? You've had MS for as
Mm-mm.
long as I have.
No.
There was a bunch of people that raised money and left Canada to go to the States. This wasn't much more than 5 years ago,
Hmm.
because apparently there was some vein in your neck or something that you could get widened that apparently cured MS. I had a friend who actually has MS as well
Mm-hmm.
that I went to high school with. His name's Kevin. He raised money and went, and he's progressive, and that was supposed to be a promising treatment, and he's actually worse now than he was before after having the treatment. So I am very leery about anything that doesn't have any longitudinal data.
Right.
I really, really am. So I will not, when it comes to MS, run towards any expensive, extravagant, new sort of pop treatment until I see some sort of longitudinal data that says it's effective in getting beneficial outcomes,
Yeah.
because it's expensive and potentially detrimental if you don't know
Right.
what's going to happen in the long run. I don't know. Maybe you feel different, Amanda.
I mean, I feel the same. I mean, I was telling you, I was talking to, excuse me, I'm sorry.
All right.
As I
You're
was
good.
talking to you earlier about treatment options, and
Yeah, because I'm an awful person.
the kind of treatment that I have leaned towards, and
Mm.
one of the motivating factors for me to avoid the oral medications is that I don't believe they've been on the market long enough.
If not,
And
this is
so
one of them.
we don't know we don't truly know the side effects, what could happen. We don't truly know if they're even effective and worth taking because they're basically very time consuming to take because you have to constantly get your liver enzymes checked and your kidneys checked. So you have to go and get blood drawn like every other week.
And then potentially have to go on medications to
Right. Yeah.
to
And
keep, yeah.
and so I've avoided that for that exact reason. And I would definitely avoid some vein widening treatment that
Yeah, it was crazy.
nobody's ever heard of. I guess
It
the
was called
five.
liberation treatment. It was huge up here in Canada for a
Wow, I
long
have
time. It was
never
like a
heard of
fad.
that.
Oh, you should Google it.
I will. I'm actually going to
Yeah,
do that after we
yeah,
get done talking.
yeah.
Somebody, formerly Rod Line, says, "You and your guests have been great tonight. So much to think about. Thank you for sharing your stories. You keep my mind out of ab echo chamber. Maybe
I'm
Anne.
assuming that's probably Anne,
Okay.
an echo chamber.
Yeah, you keep my mind out of an echo chamber, and I really appreciate and respect your work. The best to both of you." So
I agree with
that
that.
was
I think you do
sweet.
wonderful work. That's why I had you on my channel, because I think you're fantastic. You do
Oh.
amazing work.
Well, again, because of my condition, I haven't been able to, and because of the respiratory infection that I believe was COVID I had,
Mm.
I hadn't been able to make videos consistently, especially the videos that they're time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
I calculated it when I had kind of in the midway through from whatever. I calculated the time it takes me to do one video, and it's about 40 hours per video.
Yeah, that's
And,
right.
when you have other things needing to be done, when you have something that, again, my primary biggest symptom is fatigue. So when you have that fatigue and you're just like, I really can't lift my head today. No way am I going to be able to basically perform on a video. It's it's hard, and I feel again I feel like, oh, I'm letting people down because they really like it. But I can't do it as
You need to focus on your
consistently.
physical health, though. Like you really do.
Mm-hmm.
You do so many valuable things, Amanda. Like you are so good at what you do. I learned so much from you. However long it takes is worth it. So just think about it that way. However long it takes for you to be able to get a video out is worth it for anybody who really values what you do and doesn't see you, like you said, which is not the real measure of value, as a commodity, as something to consume. Anybody who is looking at you for information and values you as a person is not going to feel let down because you needed to be able to make sure that you were okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you wanted to make sure that you took the time that was necessary to both make sure that you're okay and make sure that you put out something that it's of a quality that you're satisfied with.
Right. I'm very, yeah, I'm kind of a perfectionist, but I'll let go spelling errors for some reason.
Oh, I'm
don't know
dyslexic,
what.
so you do what you do.
Okay.
I'll never notice.
All right. Some
I'll
people,
never
you
even know.
some people put it in the comments like you misspelled cocaine. It's like, okay.
People do that. Or on the opposite end of the spectrum, do you ever get comments that go, "What do you use such big words?" I get that.
I don't.
Are you serious? I get that all the time.
No.
All the time. Comments and emails. Why do you use such big words?
I guess
Were you
because
trying to sound smart?
I
Are you trying
try
to sound
not to
smart?
use big words on purpose. I'm
Really?
I'm pretty, generally I'm cognizant of that.
Cognizant's a big word, Amanda.
Well, I mean, in a live stream, it's different in a live stream, but like in my just general produced videos, I'm pretty it's aware, it's on the top of my mind.
I saw you change that in midstream.
Yes, I did.
Got that.
So yeah, no, I don't get that thing. And
why do you do that in your this is way off topic, but I'm actually interested from a content production perspective because I get that all the time. I find it difficult to be succinct, and especially when I'm talking about things from a psychological perspective, to not use the actual terminology in the literature that I'm reading in order to be able to transmit the information accurately. Like I feel as though it may lose something if I'm not using that vernacular. So I use that vernacular and just kind of hope that anybody that's interested in hearing what I have to say will either look it up or already understand it or be able to infer my meaning from context. But from a communication perspective, I'm curious, do you feel as though people are more apt to listen and maybe it's more digestible that way? Like seriously, I'm looking for the advice here because I get it all the goddamn time. It's infuriating. Actually, I almost feel like it's misogynistic.
Well, first off, yes, it is. I would imagine
totally
that would be because I'm just inferring that based off of other comments I may get. Like, how do you know this? You didn't read this particular book from this particular person, so therefore everything you said is invalidated.
Pronouns in bio, that's what I hear. Don't hear what you have to say.
I think that I want it to be more easily digestible for more people because I am interested in getting this information out. And so I don't want the words that I use to be a hindrance to that.
Right.
Does that make sense? I mean, it's the same reason.
No, that makes sense.
It's the same reason why, I just was able to monetize my videos, by the way, because I hit the right metrics.
Why are your super chats on?
The super chat is on.
Are they on? Okay.
Nobody's donating. No, I'm just kidding. People have donated already. But I don't plan to monetize my other videos or my produced videos. Well, one, I hate advertising. I hate it. And two, I just don't think that my channel isn't here for that reason.
What reason is it here for?
For people to learn. I want people to learn.
But if monetization helps the algorithm promote your channel,
Yeah.
more people will learn I've struggled with that too. Like I
Mm-hmm.
haven't charged my patrons, for example, since March.
Wow.
I just wouldn't, because I feel like I'm okay. Some of my patrons may not be okay, and I don't ever want any one of them to have to feel like they have to explain to me why they left.
Right.
And I don't want to have that conversation. I don't want to put them in the position to have that conversation. If 100% of them are like a millionaires, they don't have to worry about it. I don't care. I'm okay. I want to make sure they're not okay. They are okay, and that they don't have to explain to me if they're not. So I just haven't. But I did monetize my channel.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons that I monetize my channel is because I understand how the algorithm works. And I feel as though if you have a good message that you want people to listen to, then you need to do what you need to do to get it in front of people. If you don't like the advertisements and you don't want the money from it, donate it somewhere.
That's
Donate
true.
it to a charity, like, but it will at least get more views, more eyes on your content if you didn't do it. Like if you want to take money from advertisers and give it to an organization that will contravene their purposes, then great. Utilize them to work against them.
That's it. You know what? Honestly, never thought about that. I kind of suspected that was the case. Like, well, you know, my videos will be promoted more if I,
Oh, absolutely.
do the advertising.
Monetizing.
You know, I was on your channel, and I think I may have mentioned this during
We talked
the
about
discussion.
propaganda. So
Right. Advertising is propaganda. And so I'm like, I'm actively and knowingly, activating propaganda and feeding that to my viewers. And so
What if you
I'm
did an
super
opening
conflicted.
statement telling people to ignore the ads? Like
Like at the beginning of every video,
like,
just
as
ignore
part of
it.
an opening, like I do an intro for my videos. It's like a standard intro. I don't do anything about that because it's not like a primary concern to me. But what if you, if where it seems like it's a primary concern to you, in order to contravene that dissonance, did something at the opening of the videos, like as part of your opening, saying these videos are monetized, just to let you know 100% of monetization is going to whatever, or every cent of monetization is going to support me, and this is what I stand for, and I go again, like there's a way to utilize, like ride them in order to contravene them.
No, that's
You know
a
what I
great
mean?
idea. Honestly, I'll probably
Like
do
really, like
that.
one of the best things that I ever did on my channel was take a homophobic rhetoric and turn it into a positive message. So I started a church called Sexual Humanism, because there was a church that was like a ministry that was using sexual humanism as this sort of monolithic term to describe anybody who essentially supported anything LGBT, like even in the slightest. So I created a church called Sexual Humanism, and I sold t-shirts, and I started a PayPal account, and I took everything from it and I put it into a university bursary, or a whatever the scholarship, to send an LGBT person to university in the name of the people who were saying this in the state in Kentucky where they were.
Wow.
Like weaponizing the rhetoric is a way to expose the rhetoric while simultaneously allowing you to project yourself to wider audiences. You're marginalizing yourself by not existing within the system that promotes that rhetoric, and not you. If you can utilize that rhetoric to work against it, you might have a better chance. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm open for discussions about that, but it's worked for me in the past.
Well, it's kind of that problem of, that we were discussing earlier with disability. Do we, and advocacy and social justice, do we operate within the system and, basically try to, I don't know, avoid parts of the system, or do we just try to get rid of that system entirely? And so my default was, okay, if I want to get rid of this system entirely, I am just not going to have it appear. But no, you're insanely smart too. And
I'm not.
I honestly never thought about doing those things because, again, I just couldn't figure out a way where I could feel comfortable doing it and still, basically upkeep the channel, because again, my videos are highly produced. So that means I buy software, pay for software once a month, every month. It's pretty expensive, lighting and all that crap. It has
Support Amanda.
Yeah, exactly. It has come from out of pocket expenses. One thing, kind of diverting, getting back a little bit on this kind of social justice aspect. No, you're fine. I think I'm the one that got us off. But even though that's just how live streams are, I think they're fun when I see live streams that kind of go off topic. I'm actually more engaged in it because I'm like, okay, you're a human and you're talking like a human would talk. You're not there to just like, act out whatever, you're actually being a real human being. And it just feels, it feels right.
More organic, yeah.
Right. So just to kind of, not feel right, I guess.
Let's get back to not being organic.
Right. I wanted to kind of mention that social justice aspect where where it was redistribution, recognition, and representation. All three of those in combination needed to work needed to work together in order to kind of assure a just society. And so I just wanted to mention what they mean. So definitions, isn't that fun?
I love a good definitional argument. You know me.
So redistribution is to promote surface reallocations of economic outputs, either without touching the underlying structures that generate economic inequality. So kind of what we were talking about. Do we operate within the system or do we try to get rid of the system? And another idea as far as redistribution is concerned is, again, you could attempt deep level economic restructuring entirely. Recognition is you could either seek to affirm devalued differences or commonalities that transcends differences, which I think would be really hard. And I just don't see that happening, because if anything that we are good at doing as a species, we are good at identifying differences and kind of categorizing, right?
Pattern recognition and categorization.
Exactly. Yeah. And so in doing so, we kind of have a natural tendency to create an us versus them, right? And I just don't see that going away. I wish it would. I hate it. So you could either, I guess, work towards that, where everybody stops classifying differences and just says we are flat out equal.
That'll never happen.
Exactly.
People will never stop classifying
I don't think so either.
Or recognizing differences.
Yeah. Or we could attempt
I'm
sorry.
No, you're okay. You're okay. I'm done. We're good.
Another option as far as recognition is concerned is you could attempt to transform your culture, like in depth, by deconstructing the underlying frameworks that produce differences in the first place. And so in doing so, one of my goals has been basically to address capitalism, because capitalism needs to differentiate. It needs to create hierarchies in order to survive. It automatically needs unemployed people in order for your employers to compete with each other to basically get an employee at the lowest cost possible in order for them to make a profit. So the unemployed need to be there, which means we have a system that automatically assures poverty, right? Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Am I making any sense here?
No, I think you are making sense.
And so,
Like, yeah.
and another thing about this system is the, I guess, commoditization of illnesses, of medical care, of I mentioned in
Oh, I'm
the
Canadian.
well,
Woo!
you get the you're lucky. Not no,
Sorry.
you're lucky. You're lucky, but you're also lucky along with like pretty much every other nation in the
Right?
world.
The US is baffling to me. Like, you guys are the richest country in the world, and you don't have socialized medicine of all things.
Right. It's
Uh,
just the propaganda. Because one
People
thing,
talk about us like we're like weird socialists or
yeah,
communists that just, like, but we're fine. Like we don't get medical care. So I'll give you an example, and he's probably going to be upset with me, and I think he's watching. But my boyfriend, he lives
mhm,
in Alberta. His name is Paul. He got a very rare form of cancer.
mhm,
Um, he's fine. He's in remission. This was several years ago. He went through all of his cancer treatments, and the only thing he had to pay for
mhm.
all of his incredibly high tech cancer treatments was the parking.
Shit. I mean,
That was the entirety of what he had to pay. And he wasn't currently insured at the time. That's just what the Canadian government paid. And it cured his cancer. So when people talk about, and I have multiple sclerosis, I've paid $0 and 0 cents.
mhm,
If I'm insured through my office, so like I keep holding this up, if I decide to do this, it might cost me $6 a month, maybe. I don't know. It might cost me nothing, because I can also get it subsidized through the
mhm.
government, because I can apply for disability. Um, it's Paul says it was close to $1,000 in parking over the years.
Jeez.
So he cured his cancer for $1,000 in parking over the course of several years. And I think he's exaggerating. He might not be. He's in Calgary. Um, So when people talk about us like we're these weird socialists
Mhm,
that don't have medical treatment, and that we have to wait a long time, like it can be slightly true. Like, for example, if I wanted a family doctor in my area where I currently live,
mhm.
because I moved, it would take me a while because the family doctors here are already full.
Right.
So I have to drive 40 minutes to my family doctor. But I also have the opportunity to go to 700 walk-in clinics. I can go to any walk-in
Wow.
clinic anyway. If I have the flu, I just go to a walk-in clinic. I pay nothing. I just hand them my MSI card and say, "My name is Shannon. Here is my MSI card." And they say, "Sit there." And I wait maybe max a half an hour. And then I go see the doctor, and they tell me I have the flu, and then I go home, or I get a prescription if I need one. Like,
Wow.
it's ridiculous when people talk about the Canadian system from America. They talk about it like we're all just like, oh, we're dying of illnesses because we can't get treatment. No, we get treatments all the time. We have so many avenues. We have emergency rooms everywhere. We have walk-in clinics everywhere. The thing that does suck is that sometimes it's difficult for us to get family doctors, and one of the reasons it's difficult is because all of the doctors that are trained here move to the States because they can get paid boatloads of money in
Right.
the States, and they're not getting paid as much here. They're still fine. They're
Right.
still like millionaires, but they can be multi-millionaires if they move to the States. So that's my TED talk on that. Like,
I
it's
yeah, you're right. It is baffling, and so this type of medical care is just taking care of your citizenry, right? It's just
mhm.
something that should be instinctual if a country were to exist generally. But the United States, it's more concerned about control. So it's not here to protect us. It's not here. The country doesn't exist for that purpose. It is basically exist for power, and in doing so, it has to control the masses.
It's an
So,
industrial complex that needs to make sure it placates
right,
its workforce.
right. And so that is prioritized over everything. I mean, look at how COVID has been handled here,
Well,
where we had a
that's why our
governor,
borders shut the hell down.
right? We had a governor in Texas. You guys probably heard about this, where he's like, people should be willing to die for capitalism. I think
Yeah.
the governor in Florida also shared that sentiment. And so that's why we did not close down like we should have, and stay closed down like we should have. That's why even mask mandates don't exist in the vast majority of the
You guys
states.
don't have mask mandates?
Mm-mm.
We have one case here, and we've always had masks. Like it was just like a regular thing.
Mm-mm.
They made it mandatory on July 31st here in Nova Scotia when we had 0 cases because they want to make sure, especially if we want to open schools and like go back like in September when schools open here, because I
Mm-hmm.
think they open in August in the States, but here they open in September. Um, we wanted to make sure that the case load was low so that we could open schools.
Mm-hmm.
So we put in like if you're inside a building, you have to wear a mask. And we have one case.
Oh.
And our borders are closed. Like if you are not from we have an Atlantic province bubble. So we're a tiny province, and there's another province called New Brunswick and another one called PEI and Newfoundland that are like directly adjacent to us, also with exceptionally low case counts. So we have a bubble for tourism mostly so that we can keep our economies going, where all of us maybe have like 1 to 2 cases at a time and we can travel amongst each other, but there's mandatory masks, and we're most of us are doing staycations. I just did a staycation. I'm on vacation right now. I just stayed in Nova Scotia, but we always wear masks, and all of us are fine with it. It's
It's
like I
because
look
we're
at the
fucking nuts here. We're crazy.
like I
I
look at
don't
your
know.
protests about wearing masks, and
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's ridiculous.
is that your like that's the biggest problem in your life?
Right? Yeah, I actually
But
mentioned the
I
same damn thing. Yeah.
fucking wish.
I'm like,
Just put
if
the goddamn piece of cloth over your face and shut up. Just go.
I mean, look at the priorities. You could be protesting for the Black Lives Matter movement, so people don't keep dying, especially extrajudiciously executed. You could be doing that, but no, it's the masks that you have a problem with. Like, how
Right.
comfortable is your life? Where that is the biggest problem.
Yeah, but white privilege doesn't exist though.
Right,
Privilege isn't a
right,
thing.
mm-hmm.
It's a myth.
Right.
It's a myth. You can take an AK-47 onto the steps of a legislative building, and that means that like that those are your rights. But people who are routinely, because of their identity, subjugated, murdered, have their rights taken away from them,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have the right to protest.
Right.
But if you have to wear a mask to Walmart, you better get your ass on the streets, because apparently your life is being destroyed. Like the perspective shift, like how do you not understand
It's yeah.
the massive disparity in perspective that is required for that to be an issue that takes you to the streets?
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's also, it takes them to the streets for that particular issue because they know they can get away with it. They know they can do it. They
no,
know
can't, because white privilege isn't a thing. I'm sorry.
right, but
It's wrong.
they seriously do know what they're doing. They know that COVID does exist. They just want to, again, maintain a system that subjugates people, particularly people of color. They're racist, even though they won't admit being racist, which is kind of intertwined in our capitalist system. Again, another way to classify the differences between people and therefore assure a hierarchy is maintained. And
People who
that,
retain positions of privilege
mhm,
don't even want to acknowledge why they have privilege, because if they acknowledge why they have privilege, it can all fall apart.
right. And then it's like, well, why aren't you addressing it? You just acknowledged it, right? And so
Yeah,
they're not
exactly.
interested in doing that. They're not
They have
interested
to
in
deny
fixing
it.
it. Yeah, so they have to pretend like it doesn't exist, or just
True.
go like, try to reverse it. Well, you're being racist against me because you called me a racist. And I'm like, okay, no. it's
Yeah,
it's mind-boggling, that we maintain this, and people are okay with it. That's what's
I
the
agree.
problem. Why are so many people okay with assuring a lower class, so that why are you okay with this?
I agree.
I don't get it.
Yeah, we're not having an argument
Mm-hmm.
because I agree. I entirely agree. I just it is not okay in Canada either. Like, I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
put up Canada as this like utopian state. Like, I don't know if you ever heard, like, where I live in Nova Scotia,
Mm-hmm.
we have a community called Africville. So in the War of 1812, there was Black loyalists who were offered land to be loyal to the British Commonwealth, essentially. And they were given land throughout Nova Scotia.
Okay.
Many of them were given land on the peninsula of Halifax, which is our capital city here, and prime land, like really prime land. They didn't realize it then, they realized it later.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and after 200 years, they the the government here realized that they could industrialize that land because we were a massive port
Mm-hmm.
and a harbor, and they were right on the port, and they refused to give them water, they refused to give them sewage even though they paid taxes just like everybody else. They refused to pave their roads, and they were still a thriving community. And then in the late 60s, um, they condemned all of the land of Africville and built a bridge and demolished all the houses. And if you could prove you owned the land deed, you were given the value of your property, which wasn't actually the value of your property.
Right.
If you didn't have a land deed, you were given $500, and you were essentially just sent on your way, and they demolished your house in front of you. And that entire community of people were just disbanded. They were just sent off to nowhere
Right.
to just find their way. Like, we have our own horrible, detrimental things that we need to atone for here. Like,
Yeah.
Africville is now this amazing, this amazing cultural museum that's no longer allowed to be developed. It'll never be allowed to develop, to be developed, um, because we've paid reparations to the community there. And but it's those stories exist everywhere. And I
Right.
think one of the differentials is, and this isn't to say that this is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good thing, because it should never happen to begin with. This happened in my mother's lifetime.
Right.
This is not an ancient story. This is something that was televised and happened, and people were okay with happening.
Yeah. It's
But
amazing.
we and I say we,
Mm-hmm.
not being fully collectivist, because there are people here that would agree with me. I think that there may be less, but one of the differentials is that somebody like me here, I'm a cis white person
Mm-hmm.
in Nova Scotia, and that makes me ashamed, and I want to talk about it because I think more people need to hear about the fact that it happened, so that they can recognize that when somebody says racism doesn't exist now, or that we abolished racism, there are people who are still alive right now in my province whose homes were destroyed in front of them because they were Black and they lived in an area that the people in power wanted. And I live in a progressive country. And that is the problem.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So it's like, yeah, that's horrible. I honestly have never heard about that.
Africville was one of the very first free communities of African Americans in North America.
Wow. Damn.
And we destroyed it.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. That's just horrible. You know, my parents went to segregated schools, legally segregated schools. So it's again, it's very recent. It's things people can go, oh yeah, this happened in my lifetime, or I did this under Jim Crow, you know. And people, I don't know why they say it doesn't exist anymore. Oh, you know, when did I read about this? Okay, I think I did this in another live stream or talked about it. It was about, what was I talking about? Shit, I forgot now because I got distracted. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's probably my fault.
No. I got
I'm
distracted,
distracted.
by something around here on my desk. And I'm like, why is that there? And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember why that's there now. But what was I talking about again?
I have this here. That distracts me.
Let's see. I was talking about like living under Jim Crow and racism not being gone. Oh, the individual versus the collective. So people individualize racism. It's as if it's an individual problem. Like, you are responsible for racism. You are racist, and that is it. That's what exists. It's not the structural problems that exist. They will not acknowledge that because they have individualized racism, as opposed to recognizing that the whole system was built, at least in the US, the whole system here was built on the backs of Black people here, you know? I mean, God, it's enshrined in our Constitution that Black people are, you know, less than whites. I mean, yeah, it's later was, you know, amended, but it's still there. And, you know, yeah, that's why, you know, the Civil War was fought to maintain slavery, because it's horrible. But, you know, to pretend that our system isn't enshrined with it is laughable and ignorant at the least, right?
Yeah.
Either,
like,
you know,
saying, I'm not doing a racism,
right?
So nothing is racist,
Right.
Like, we're not doing a racism anymore. So what's your problem?
Exactly.
Well, the problem is, just because you, Dave or Karen Smith, aren't currently actively doing a racism, that doesn't mean that the effects of your parents and your grandparents and your grandparents' parents doing a racism aren't carrying forth. Like,
right.
You don't understand that you are benefiting from generational wealth. You are benefiting from not having a stigmatization regarding your race or your culture. You are benefiting from the social hierarchy that you apparently want to deny exists, while simultaneously benefiting from. You denying that all of those things happened is just ridiculous to me. Like, when people position themselves that way and say, well, racism doesn't exist anymore. First, obviously, like anybody can just like go and bring up we have the internet.
Right.
Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't take long to refute that. But when they bring it to the institutionalization component, when they say,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's not institutionalized anymore,
It's
then
like,
it becomes
okay, if it's not institutionalized anymore, why do we still have jaywalking laws? Why do people still get cited for that?
right.
Because those were specifically designed to basically control Black people, to assure that they stayed segregated and stayed away from the white community. That's why they're there. And they're still there. They're still on the books and they're still being enforced. So if racism isn't institutionalized, why is that there? Why was that not removed? I want to read a comment from Ricardo Olivier.
Oh, Olivier. I
Thank
love
you.
Ricardo. He goes on my channel. I love him. He's great.
He says, Shannon, thanks for helping me find Amanda. I owe you one. Amanda, please look out
You
for
do.
yourself, but keep speaking truth to power the best you can. This is a great stream. So there you go. Confirmation that, us getting off topic is still
Magic.
A-okay. Yeah,
We're talking about MS.
Mm-hmm.
Look at us go.
Well, this is the whole thing, the whole intersectionality aspect.
Systems,
exactly.
Though.
It does.
It ultimately does. Like the fact that this conversation organically went there, I think is just a testament to the fact that that's the case.
Right.
Like, because I was talking with Nate Brody. I don't know if you saw that on my channel. He's a lawyer. He's an African-American lawyer. And I was talking to him about Black Lives Matter and everything that was going on. And he was talking about we could probably talk for hours. I'm gonna have to go to bed soon. It's almost 11.
I know. I'm
but like
tired.
We were talking about the prison system, and there was so many institutionalized laws that were created, not like even before Jim Crow, because you were able to retain a slave essentially if you could get them to be a criminal.
Right.
So many things, like for example, not paying property taxes, they would give somebody who was Black that was previously a slave property because they had to, but then charge them property taxes that they knew that they were exorbitant, that they knew they wouldn't be able to pay because they would redline them. And then they wouldn't be able to pay the property taxes. So now you're a prisoner, and as a prisoner, you're able to be utilized for labor again. So now, and that's continued. The prison system is built upon that as a predicate.
Right.
So the prison system is institutionalized, monetized. You can trade prison. Like prisons are publicly traded companies in America. Like it's commodified. So marijuana, for example, being illegal. Like if you are a college student who is a white cis dude, bro, you're just like, oh, you're just being a college student. If you're a college student who is an African American, guess what? Now you're probably working in a call center for a cent an hour, and that's not even going to cover your commissary. So don't tell me that it's not still institutionalized, because the institutions that were built to keep slaves still exist.
Right, exactly.
And are being utilized to keep slaves.
Right. So I'm curious, again, still off topic. Do you think, because, you have a different perspective, do you think that there is something seriously wrong with American society?
Yes.
Like, I think that there is a sickness here. Like, societies basically are their own organic being, and ours is really sick. Do you think that's the case?
I've said before, like, you have turned your culture, and I don't mean you personally. I mean, like, America seems to have turned their culture into entertainment that they consume. You elected a reality TV star as your president. You were
Yeah.
turning your country into media to consume.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like to me as an outsider who looks at it. It seems as though it's more interesting to see what happens when you know, vote someone off the island, only it's real life and this is a country.
Right. And
Like that is what it seems like to an outsider. Like when Donald Trump was running for president over here in Canada, we were like, there's no way. Really? Like, obviously, there's no way.
Yeah.
Wow, there was a way. And the way that you guys seem to use rhetoric against each other in a polarizing fashion and how it's reinforced by media is alarming to me. And I think that the fact that it's reinforced by media, because people look to media to get kind of a pulse check on how they should feel about society. And people, you know, all about confirmation bias and affirmation bias. And so people are going to consume the media that's already affirming their existing bias. And that's starting to become more polarizing. Like people are choosing teams and pulling farther apart. It's much more difficult to even attempt to have these conversations. And it's so dangerous. Like that's what I think. I think it is so dangerous, this pull apart that seems to be happening where there's this team and this team. And if you're even in the middle, that means that we need to assassinate you because you're not on this team or this team. And I don't know. It's just that's an outsider.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I knew that. I think that there's a sickness in our society, and I didn't associate it with how everything has been created for consumption, particularly for entertainment purposes. It's kind of a self-feeding loop, right? So if people are so focused on that entertainment aspect, they're not addressing real things. They're not even focusing on real problems and real things, right?
Not paying attention to them at all
exactly.
Because they're being entertained.
And so it assures that people continue to ignore the problems because they get to just not think about them. And I think that ignoring of the problems creates people like, oh, racism doesn't exist anymore because they've ignored it. Therefore, it's not there. It's funny.
It doesn't affect me, and I don't see it. And the media I consume doesn't present it to me.
Exactly. And I wish that there was a way to fix it because I don't like it. I looked into immigrating to Canada too a few years ago. But
one of us.
But because I have a chronic illness, I can't immigrate.
Really?
Yeah, Canada will not accept people with disabilities and chronic illnesses unless they are refugees.
Oh, because they're afraid that people are going to come here to
just
utilize the medical system.
Right. And so I'm pretty much stuck in the States, unfortunately, because I don't know why that sickness didn't translate to some of us living here, but it didn't. And so I'm like, mass exodus, please. I'm ready to leave, but there's no place to go.
I mean, I'm sorry. It must be frustrating.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. I think like the UK will allow people with disabilities and chronic illnesses to immigrate under some circumstances, like as long as they have a job or something along those lines. So they're a little bit more forgiving. And I think even, where was it? One of those Nordic countries are even more forgiving. Like they just say, yeah, you can come. But I'm like, I can't speak your language. So, I'm going to read one more comment and then we're going to call
Oh
it
no,
a
I do need
day.
to go to bed. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
No, it's 9 o'clock here, and I
It's
need to go
11.
to bed. So, um, okay, so Supreme Scientist says, this is so dope. I just found brain snacks a few months ago, and I just got exposed to Shannon Q via the atheist experience recently as well. Small world.
Oh yeah, I do that now. That's the thing you do. I co-host the Atheist Experience. It is a weird
Interesting.
world. Yeah.
I am interested, Shannon. We can do this later. I would like to talk to you more just about general stuff, and also,
Anytime.
yeah. So we'll need to obviously do this again. People really
Sure.
enjoyed listening to us. And I had fun. So, you guys, thank you for watching. For those that stuck around the whole time, wow, you guys are troopers. But thank you for, watching. I think it's fun and being a part of the conversation. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream again. Shannon, thank you for being here. Your
Appreciate you.
time is, again, very valuable to you. I know that. I get it. And so that time that you allocated for this is just something that we should all appreciate.
No, I appreciate that you wanted me to be here and that I was worth your time. So thank you. Like, I mean that, like, generally, like, genuinely. Wow, Jesus Christ, that was the wrong word.
I do that all the time.
Classic MS brain.
It really is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, honestly, I misspeak all the time.
So
yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Again, we will do this again. Guys, thank you and have a great weekend. Have a good night, and I'll probably be doing a live stream next week. We'll see. Bye, guys. Did I end it yet or no?